and the graveyard where Dylan has rested since 1953. Who could have predicted all that? Dylan was there with Glyn. The last time I saw Glyn was when I visited him on his sickbed in the house in Cardiff, just 2 days before we flew off to America for some poetry readings, and to see our son, who was studying in UMass and staying with our dear friend Hanley Davis. Glyn had had an arm amputated a couple of years before, but the cancer was a lit fuse in his green flower. My poem. We talked of Wales and friends and literature, what was left to write. I held his left hand, worn as 90-year-old leather, and tried not to look at the stump of his other, phantomed in his folded pajama sleeve. His eyes were empty and wet. His hand, light as a feather, gripped mine like a child's when I rose to leave. When asked if he believed in God, often, he said. That's one of my favourites. You know, we never ruled the world, the Welsh, but we're good with words, aren't we? When asked if he believed in God, often, he said. A wonderful man. John Ormond, on the right there, sitting next to Glyn on a John Tripp memorial bench in Whitchurch, Cardiff, some 10 years before, has his legs crossed and wears a jaunty cap, a bit like Lenin on his day off. That's not John Lennon, that's Lenin. Are you allowed to say Lenin in North America? I'm not sure. Now, John Ormond Thomas, remember I mentioned him back right at the beginning of the talk, some 4 hours ago. Was an undergraduate at Swansea University in his early days. He went on to work for the prestigious news magazine Picture Post, and then made films on writers and artists for the BBC in Cardiff, including Dylan, Vernon Watkins, Kerry Richards. This was a golden age for the BBC in Cardiff, and John Ormond was given his head. He could do what he liked. It was wonderful. Every film he made in that series, and you can obtain them, every film he made in that series was a classic. Half-hour profiles of these people. Despite or because of Vernon Watkins' advice, the undergraduate poet had developed into one of the most significant figures of in poetry in Wales after the war. John Ormond, along with the composer Dan Jones, another great Swansea member of that circle, were close, both these men were closely involved in attempting to see that Dylan Thomas's funeral went smoothly in Larne. After the coffin had been brought back from the SS United States, there's an irony, isn't it? In the liner SS United States docked at Southampton. It was picked up by Ebby Williams, the landlord of Brown's Hotel in Larne. There were problems. Dylan's open casket was propped on chairs in the front of the bookcase in his mother's house, the Pelican, in Larne town, a short walk from the boathouse. Dan Jones, the composer, later described the scene. He said, Dylan's face was plastered with cosmetics, forehead and skin covered with pancake makeup, cheeks heavily rouged, mouth vividly lipsticked. Even the most brassy tart would not have ventured onto the streets in such a getup. Despite their efforts, the funeral turned into, quote, a sort of farcical nightmare. The drinking, the violence, the sex. Well, that's where Dylan is. Look how, I don't think, it's so simple, isn't it? It's a simple wooden cross in Larne Churchyard. What I'm looking at and what you can't see is on the back of the cross is a commemoration to Caitlin as well. I won't go into her life. She ended up in Italy or whatever. But they're both astonishing. Both very good. Hanley Davis will recognise this. 2 years before that photograph of us on that bench in Cardiff,